Chiefs fans, Gary McKenzie, here again with you for another episode of Gridiron Lines here at RGR Football. As you know, I've been saying RGR Football is the best Chiefs YouTube content channel in the history of existence, not because of myself. I give all the honors to Ryan and Dan and Seth. I just play my little role here. So thanks for joining. And today's video, I'm going to start with a bit of a somber note. I want to address the shooting that took place at the Chiefs parade on Wednesday. And as of now, there's 22 people who've been injured and one person was fatally wounded. I've seen a lot of things floating around. Most of them have been prayers, sympathies, a couple people who were civilians and they became heroes that day. No one asked them to run after one of the shooters and tackle them and stop them from potentially getting away or maybe hurting more people. And nobody wanted them to have to be put in that situation either. So this Chiefs Super Bowl, especially this Chiefs Super Bowl parade, was supposed to be a happy and joyous event, and instead it gets marred by a couple people's senseless acts. I think they currently have 2 or 3 suspects, and the FBI does not believe that this was a terrorist attack of any form. Who knows? It could have been some dispute, and people just happened to be carrying weapons and firing them into a crowded area, which is never going to be good. Or it could have been more malicious than that. We don't want to speculate at this point in time. But I just want to talk for a little bit about some things I've read and I've seen. First of all, tragedies like this oftentimes bring out the best in people. I really believe in that. And you could see on Twitter, at the parade, people were consoling each other. They were letting them know that they were there for each other. There were a couple people that went and stopped the assailants or stopped the attackers. Those people are heroes. And as far as, the whole gun argument, I am personally just so sick and tired of it. I'm sick and tired of people getting killed by firearms in this country. I'm sick and tired by ineffectual leadership and the feeling that there's nothing that we can do to change this course that we're on. And that comes from poor leadership in this country from the top down, and inability to compromise between 2 different parties who have 2 different ideas of which direction things should go. And so, what can we do? And I think the things that we can do is, if we know someone has a firearm and they're acting in a way that you think is dangerous, or they've said they're going to do something dangerous, take that seriously. Report it. That's something that we can do as individuals. And then if you have a firearm in your home, I live in a rural area. I'm surrounded by guns. Everyone has guns where I'm at, and we understand that you have to respect them. So if you have a firearm in your home, make sure you're teaching your children that respect. I'm sure all of you are. I shouldn't have to have this conversation. But one thing I saw was that some misinformation was being spread saying that, the shooter was stopped by someone with a concealed carry firearm on them. And that's not true. They were tackled. And I don't even feel like I should have to say this because everyone should know this, but if you do have a concealed carry firearm on you, I've got no problem with that. But don't try to stop a shooter. Don't try to stop a shooter at a crowded parade. First of all, you might miss and hurt somebody, and we know you don't want to do that. And then second of all, it's hard for law enforcement to tell the difference between who's the good guy with the gun, who's the bad guy with the gun. At that point in time, they're just trying to stop whatever's going on. So I think the 2 people that tackled the person that was running away, that was exactly the correct way to handle that. Props to them. They're heroes. And I just feel I feel terrible that this has happened again. And unfortunately, due to our ineffectual leadership, inability to compromise, I don't see any end in sight to this. So I I just do what I can do, and that's it. And I know that everyone watching this video is just worried about what they can do too. So I don't think the Chiefs Super Bowl victory will be marred by this. I think the parade will be marred by this, though. And if the Chiefs do win another Super Bowl, who knows what's going to happen in terms of planning the next one, planning the next parade. See how that gets handled. If it's at a different location, if things are more restricted, who knows? But it's just a terrible tragedy, and my heart goes out to everyone that is affected. My prayers go out to everyone that has been victimized by this attack. I hope everyone that is in the hospital currently has a speedy recovery. And I hope those that were emotionally impacted by this or traumatized by this can get the professional help that they need. Because a traumatic event like this, it's not just something you just wake up from and forget for a lot of people. It's something they're going to have to work through. And so I hope they can get the help they need. But that's all I want to talk about regarding the shooting. Just a terrible, tragic event. Moving on to the Super Bowl. So the reason most of you are here to talk Chiefs football. I thought Mahomes played an unbelievable game. 333 passing yards. He made one mistake, and that was the interception shortly after the third quarter had started. Other than that, he was top notch. And at the end of the game, he had two opportunities to drive down the field and win the game for the Chiefs. So one in the fourth quarter. He needed a touchdown to win, a field goal to tie. About 2 minutes left on the clock in the fourth quarter. Wasn't able to score a touchdown on that drive. And then in overtime, the 49ers elected to receive the ball. And we'll talk more on that in a little bit. And Mahomes instead Mahomes had another chance. So 49ers get the ball after overtime. They're driving the ball down the field. They score a field goal. Mahomes gets a second chance to try to win the game with a touchdown. And I knew that in overtime, when Mahomes got that second chance, that was too many chances. I had this gut feeling he was going to drive down the field, score a touchdown, and that's exactly what happened. And I just thought to myself, the 49ers just kept giving Mahomes too many chances to march the ball down the field. So speaking of overtime and the 49ers' decision to receive the ball. So this is what I love about the NFL, and that is the gamesmanship, the strategizing, the understanding of, okay, how do we want to approach this problem? And it sounded like after the post-game press conferences that the Chiefs were much more prepared for an overtime game than the 49ers were. You could really tell from the conversations the players were having, Mahomes was having, that the Chiefs had a more developed strategy and a more developed plan than the 49ers. So what are the new overtime rules? There was something Tony Romo said at the end of overtime when the Chiefs were getting ready to run their last play, which we'll talk about that in a little bit, where he was saying it's just like first quarter, Meanwhile, I follow the NFL very closely, and I did not know that rule, and I'm watching the clock tick down 7 seconds, 8 seconds, or 8 seconds, 7 seconds, 6 seconds, and they snap the ball. I'm thinking, why didn't they call a timeout? Overtime's almost over. They're going to lose. And I realized after the game that the way that the new playoff overtime rules are set up, first of all, both teams get a chance to possess the ball. So even if the first team scores a touchdown, the second team gets a chance to also score a touchdown and answer. And then after that, whichever team scores first wins the game. So there's two strategies you can approach. But before I talk about those two strategies, Another thing about the overtime rules is that each quarter or each overtime period is 15 minutes long, just like a quarter in regulation. And once that 15 minutes is done, the game is not over. It goes to the next overtime quarter. So overtime functions just like regulation. There's 15-minute quarters, and there's also a halftime. So if the game were to go 2 full 15-minute quarters in overtime without the one of the teams winning, then both teams would go into a halftime, just like they would in regulation. They'd come back over halftime and resume the game. So it's basically just like another game played at the end of the game. The criteria for winning in overtime, one criteria is if your defense gets a stop and then your offense scores. Or if your defense scores a touchdown, so they get a pick six or they pick up a fumble. That's one way to win the game. You can also win the game if, and this happened in the Chiefs game, in the Super Bowl, if the first team scores a field goal and then the second team possesses the ball and they score a touchdown. You can win that way. You can also win if the first team scores a field goal or a touchdown and the second team scores a touchdown and an extra point. So after the second possession, if your team has more points, then you win. If you have equal points, then it's the next score that wins. So the strategies that you can choose to do in this scenario are you can play for the third possession, which is what the 49ers did. The 49ers were thinking, okay, we're going to try to score a touchdown, and then Kansas City can score a touchdown, and then we're trying to get the third possession. Andy Reid and the Chiefs thought the way they were playing it was, there's not going to be a third possession. We're not taking it that far. We want the ball second, and if they score a touchdown, we're going for two. That was the Chiefs' strategy. And since that strategy won the game for the Chiefs, if we ever see another overtime game in the playoffs, we're going to see teams probably lean towards kicking the ball off in overtime. One of the benefits of kicking the ball off in overtime is that if your opponent does score a touchdown, then you have 4 downs. You know, we have to score a touchdown here. We've got 4 downs, and we're going to use all of them to try to get down the field and score a touchdown. So you benefit from that. So there's a give and take, and I want to know in the comments what everyone thinks about this strategy. Do you think that, Andy Reid's strategy was better? Obviously, the Chiefs won the game, but what do you think about the strategy? Do you think that's going to work out in the majority of cases, or do you think that, Kyle Shanahan's plan wasn't bad either, trying to play for that third possession? Personally, I liked Andy Reid's plan. And speaking of the Chiefs' plan to go for 2 no matter what, I think that the last play that won them the game was the play that they were saving for the 2-point conversion at the end of the game. I think they were saving Tom and Jerry, gun trips, right bunch, X shuttle, which was the play call that Patrick Mahomes called in that ended up winning the game for the Chiefs. I think that was the play they were saving for the 2-point conversion in overtime to win the game, and they just so happened to get the ball pretty close to the end zone. A good place to call it. The defense wasn't able to substitute. That play call was a really good call in that situation. They had Travis Kelce, trying to force a defender to make a decision. The motion from Mecole Hardman kind of hiding behind Kelce, so the defenders, I don't know if the defenders could have seen him entirely whenever he came back and turned around. So they also had Mahomes, who had been rolling to his right and then cutting upfield earlier in the game that had burned the 49ers a few times. And so it was a really well conceptualized play call given the way the game unfolded. And I think that some of these things the Chiefs did as the game progressed, especially those runs with Mahomes, I think that was part of the plan all along for the Chiefs to kind of sprinkle that in so that the 49ers defense would have to respect that. And if they wanted to kind of set up that 2-point conversion in overtime after they had given the 49ers those looks of Mahomes cutting up the field and running the ball. Because it's just in the back of their minds, okay, he's going to run it. We saw this twice. And instead, it goes to Mecole Hardman, and the Chiefs win the Super Bowl. But I think that play that won the game was the play that they were saving for the 2-point conversion. They just chose to use it at the end of the first quarter of overtime and win the game right then and there. So, what a crazy game. You know, it was a game where the fourth quarter I was watching with my dad, and I'm thinking to myself, I don't know how much more of this my heart can take. This game is stressing me out. It was a stressful game. And sure enough, the most stressful game that I've probably seen in the Super Bowl for the Chiefs, and it goes to overtime. And by that point in time in overtime, it lasted the full 15 minutes of the first quarter of overtime. And finally, we all got, a rest. Our hearts got some rest after the Chiefs scored that last touchdown, throwing the ball to Mecole Hardman to win the game. So I hope everyone was able to manage the stress pretty well, because it was getting to me. And I'm usually a pretty relaxed guy. So, different overtime strategies from two different teams. It worked in the Chiefs' favor in this game. We'll probably see other teams copy this, but you never know. So another thing I want to talk about in this game for the Super Bowl, Mahomes won his third Super Bowl MVP. We all know of his greatness. And honestly speaking, it blows my mind that the Chiefs have the greatest player, the greatest quarterback on their team. And I'm not just saying the greatest quarterback now. I think Mahomes is the greatest quarterback ever. And some people might disagree with that because, Tom Brady has more Super Bowls and, Mahomes has to have the longevity. But I'm saying that the eye test and what they've done in a short time span is unrivaled. What Mahomes has done in this short time span is unrivaled. So not only do the Chiefs have what I believe to be the greatest quarterback of all time, I also think there's a potential conversation that Andy Reid, after all is said and done, if he's able to coach until, he's 70 years old, he might be looked at as the greatest coach of all time. They have the greatest tight end of all time. And then there's a discussion about whether or not Steve Spagnuolo is the greatest defensive coordinator of all time. This is an unbelievable bunch. And you have to go back to the 2012 season, the end of the 2012 season. And it was really Clark Hunt who brought this all to Kansas City. His leadership, the Chiefs have one of the greatest, they also have one of the best owners in all of the NFL. And he made the choice to go after Andy Reid. He had a vision for what he wanted for Kansas City. He wanted an experienced coach that had a track of winning. And Andy Reid was his guy. He got him to Kansas City. He did not let him leave. And there's contract in the works, a contract extension in the works for Andy Reid. So hopefully to continue. Hopefully this trend will continue and Andy Reid stays in Kansas City for the foreseeable future. There's no plans of him retiring. I don't know why Mike Florio keeps bringing this up, and the rest of the media keeps bringing it up. He's not even 70 years old. Pete Carroll and Belichick, they were in their 70s, and so I think that retirement's not an option for Coach Reid right now. And then lastly, Steve Spagnuolo. He's won 4 Super Bowls. And his defense was a huge part of why the Giants beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl. So there's an argument, there's never been a defensive coordinator in the Hall of Fame. But I think Spagnuolo should make the cut because of what he's done. I mean, some of the calls he had versus the 49ers, they were just so well timed. That blitz from McDuffie that Purdy didn't see coming, he had Ayuk perhaps for just a split second, but he didn't go there because Juwan, I can't remember his last name's escaping me. Juwan Jennings was the hot read, and Snead was on him. This was all designed, and maybe the game ends differently if Purdy's able to throw the ball to Ayuk and get it in there, and Mike Edwards wasn't quick enough to get to the ball, but that's not what happened. So I think Spagnuolo definitely has a case to be, in the Pro Football Hall of Fame as a coordinator, as a defensive coordinator, perhaps one of the best to ever do it. But we have all these heroes and all these, lauded people on the Chiefs, both in the coaching staff and in terms of players. But I want to talk about the unsung heroes in the Super Bowl. And to me, there was 2 really clear unsung heroes in the Super Bowl. And the first, I'll start with the offense. And my unsung hero in the Super Bowl for the offense was Jerick McKinnon. McKinnon picked up so many blitzes in this game and gave Mahomes just that extra second or two to complete a pass. And McKinnon, to me, he does the dirty work, and he does it so well, and oftentimes goes unnoticed unless you really are watching him do what he does on the field. And he did all this after having abdominal surgery and returning to play, almost a month before when they thought he would be healthy. So props to Jerick McKinnon for toughing this out and really being my unsung hero for the Chiefs offense in this game. I hope he can come to Kansas City again next year. We'll see what happens. Maybe he decides to hang him up. But if he wants to come back, I would be more than happy to keep him on this roster for another year. He's a good piece for this team. Next on the defensive side of the ball, my unsung hero for this game is Mike Pennel. Mike Pennel played the game of his life. And if you go back and watch the Super Bowl again, or you have the opportunity to watch a tape, just watch Mike Pennel in this game. He was putting Trent Williams on skates at times in this game, which is no easy feat. The 49ers ran the ball, and they got around 3.2, 3.3 yards per carry. And so Mike Pennel was a huge part of this. Christian McCaffrey, his average was 1 or 2 yards less than what it normally was through the regular season. Mike Pennel played an unbelievable game. It was a huge part for why the Chiefs won, a huge part why they were able to stop the run game for the 49ers, which was the Chiefs' defensive game plan heading into this game. They decided we're not going to let Christian McCaffrey beat us. We'll put Snead and McDuffie on islands, and they did pretty well on those islands, by the way. But Pennell's my unsung hero for this game. And defensively, I think the start of the game, it's a toss-up between Trent McDuffie and Chris Jones. Chris Jones impacted so many plays in crucial moments. He has this unbelievable clutch gene that he just shows up when the Chiefs need him the most. And Trent McDuffie, I thought, just played unbelievably well, stuck to his guys like glue. He only had one mistake, and that was the holding call, which to me it was unfortunate because it was just McDuffie just got caught moving in the wrong direction and didn't have good form. So it's just one of those deals. But the Chiefs won their 4th Super Bowl. They now have one more Super Bowl than the Denver Broncos, one more Super Bowl than the Raiders, and 4 more Super Bowls than the poor San Diego Chargers. I remember a long time ago, back whenever I would be blogging about the Chiefs and commenting and all that fun stuff, and visiting teams would always come over, AFC West rivals, and the Broncos would say, yeah, well, you only have one Super Bowl, or you have never won a Super Bowl because they didn't know we won, Super Bowl 4. Raiders fans would say that too. And now they can't say that anymore. The Chiefs are the premier team in the AFC West, not only right now, but also historically. So the Chiefs are the cream of the crop in the AFC West, and they're making their way up to be the cream of the crop in the NFL from a historical standpoint. Not a lot of teams have more than 4 Super Bowls. So I'm looking forward to the Chiefs continue to expand on this. And we're going to break into off-season content soon, analyzing the draft, reviewing the roster. But I just want to talk about the Super Bowl for a little bit. And as always, like I always ask you, if you're new here and you made it to the end of this video, hit the like button. We'd really appreciate that. And then subscribe if you haven't done so already. We're trying to get to 30,000 subscribers. Not sure what crazy thing we're going to do when we get there, but hopefully one day we do get there. I think we will. And we can throw a party or something. But this is Gary signing out. Chiefs win another Super Bowl. And I think more to come with this group. Maybe they can three-peat.
Thanks for watching this video from the team at RGR Football. Click these videos to see more and subscribe to RGR Football.